Hey everyone, this is Ajay and this is part 07, and today we are going to discuss about Azure Private DNS. Let's start and try to understand what is Azure Private DNS. If you go by the definition, it provides a naming resolution for the VMs within the virtual network and its connected virtual networks. You're going to have two options, whether you want to go for the auto registration enabled on that virtual link, or you do the registration, or maybe I would say the linking between the DNS zone and the virtual network without auto registrations. So when you enable auto registration on a virtual network link, the DNS record for those VMs inside the virtual network, they get registered in the private zone. So as of now, let's understand we're going to have two options. One option, the moment you are going to register your virtual network to the DNS zone, do it with the registration or do it with the resolution. And we are going to see these two options when we go for the demo. So what are the benefits we are going to get out of it? First of all, it removes the need of the custom DNS solutions. You might be using Bind or maybe Windows AD based domain controller. Maybe you have some sort of the info blocks running. So if you go for this Azure based solution, probably you get rid of those customized DNS solutions. Second, automatic host name record management. When I say automatic, it means the moment you create the resources inside the virtual network, there's a DNS record which is going to create automatically. If you go for other solutions, this is something you need to manage. You need to create those records one by one. Now, if you don't want to go for the registration type of thing, then you can only go for the resolution. And in the resolution, the host name resolution between the virtual network, it works as well. Then it is also going to provide you split horizon DNS support. Means you might want to resolve the same FQDN internally and externally. And we are also going to discuss this thing in detail going forward. And this feature is available in all the Azure regions. So theoretically, you are going to have one VNet. Under that VNet, you are going to have the VMs. And from portal, you need to create this DNS zones, and that is going to be private. And you need to do the linking. Once this is linked, these names for the VM, it will be reflecting under the zone file, which you are going to have. Since this is something private, you're not going to get any access for these zones from the internet. There are going to be two ways to manage the DNS entry. One is, of course, is going to be the manual one, and second one, you can go for the auto registration. So let's discuss how the manual DNS entries looks like. So of course, I need to create a DNS zone, which is going to be the technet.talk.in in my examples. And I have two VMs, VM1, VM2. I need to create two entries with the A record, and that's going to be VM2. This is for the VM1. And it works, but these entry you need to create under the zones. The second option is going to be the auto registration. The moment you enable the auto registration, the host name for the VMs, whatever you create, for this example is VM1 and VM2, these are going to be the entries created automatically. So the first entry that is going to be VM technet.talk.in, and the second entry is going to be VM2.technet.talk.in under the DNS zone technet.talk.in. Now you might have a situation you have multiple VNets. So this example is VNet 1 and this is the VNet 2. You're going to have the option whether you want to go for the registration for this VNet, yes, and the option for the second VNet, whether you want to go for the registration or the resolution, that's up to you. So the moment you enable the registrations, these entries are automatically going to get into the DNS zone. So for this is VM2 technet talk.in, and this is going to be the VM3 technet talk.in. These two VNets, then they can be directly linked with the DNS zone. In the third scenario, it is going to be the split horizon functionality. Maybe you want to host a website. When somebody want to resolve it internally, they should connect with the private DNS. And if it is an external user, they should connect to the public zone. In my previous video, we already discussed about how to create the public zone. So it's the same thing. Now you are going to have the two zones and you need to create the entries. So if VM1 want to resolve, talk to VM2, there's going to be the DNS lookup and you get the IP address. Similarly, when you have external host and you want to go for some sort of resolution, you're going to connect to your name servers, and those name servers are further going to redirect it to the public DNS zone what you have. The only thing gets changed here. If I have VM1, I will be having one private IP assigned, and this VM should have a public IP address also. So if I say this is a public IP address, internally it is going to resolve the private IP address, and this public IP address, it is going to be having the entry in this DNS public DNS zone. So the traffic which comes from user, it directly gets to the public IP address. Let's understand how does DNS lookup work within the Microsoft Azure. So in this example, I have one VNet, and this VNet is VNet 20. And I'm having a CIDR, which is 10.20.0.0/16. I carved one subnet that is going to be 10.20.20.0/24. I already created this VNet. So if I go to the property of virtual network under the DNS servers, I can see this option. So default, it is already enabled. It means Azure is going to provide you all the DNS services if you want. I might have my customized solution, or maybe I'm hosting a Mind, or maybe AD controller, or maybe infoblox. So I will have an option to choose the custom, and I need to define what is the DNS server I want to use. As we already know, whenever we create a virtual network and we carve the subnet, there are going to be few IP reserved. So .2 and .3 reserved by Azure to map the Azure DNS IPs to the VNet space. Now let's talk about this IP address, which is going to be 168.63.129.16. This is owned by Microsoft and not going to be changed. So this is a public IP, and that too is a virtual public IP address that is used to facilitate a communication channel to Azure platform resources. It is also being used for load balancer probe. It is used for DSCP, and it is also used for your DNS services. So this VNet, as I mentioned, it is going to be the CIDR, which is 10.20.0.0/16. I'm going to use VM1 for DNS. So I'm going to host the bind services here. And this is VM2, which is going to be the Windows machine with the IP address 10.20.20.5. If I simply create a machine here, which is Windows, which is up and running. And I go to the command prompt and type DNS Lookup. This is the IP 168.63.129.16 that reflects as a default server. And this is what I was referring. So whenever you create any of the VM anywhere in Azure, this is going to be the default IP address going to facilitate your DHCP, DNS, load balancer probes. As I mentioned earlier, I'm going to host bind on Ubuntu server, which is going to be the VM1 to run the customized DNS. So this IP is going to be 10.20.20.4. My bind is up and running. So I want to serve everything which is internally to rest of the machines from this bind server. So I need to go to VNet 20 and under the DNS servers, I need to specify what is going to be my customized DNS server IP. In this case, it is going to be 10.20.20.4. I need to save it. After saving it, we need to keep in mind this is Windows machine, which has the default forwarder 168 series IP address. I need to reboot it so Azure services can push this as a DNS server for the resources. So from Windows machine, if I type the NS lookup, and this is something after the restart. If I see it, the new IP is already pushed, which is going to be 10.20.20.4. And that is something what we were expecting. Now, if I do a lookup for a machine, the entry which I created under this bind server zone. So you can see this is my zone here, and I created an entry. It's just simply name VM, and it's a record with the IP address 10.20.20.5, which is this machine. If I do a NS lookup and put VM technet talk.in, it is going to return the result which is expected. In my demo, I'm going to have VNet 20 with a range of 10.20.0.0/16 and VNet 30 that is going to be 10.30.0.0/16. And I'm going to host 2 VM each. And then I need to create a DNS zone, obviously, and see the results. Let's start with creating a private zone. In the Azure portal, if you're going to type DNS, it is going to pop up two options. The first option is for public DNS zone, which is the exercise we already done in the previous session. This time, I'm going to choose private DNS zone. After choosing the private DNS zone, you are going to see these options. You can create your private DNS zone either from here or you do it from here. So let's hit the create button. After hitting the create button, you are going to see this screen, my subscription, that is a default one, my resource group. I'm going to use my existing resource group, which is AZ-text. And then I need to define what is my going to be the zone name. So in this case, I mentioned I'm going to use technet talk.in throughout my demos. And the resource location is going to be Central India. Now hit the review and create. At this moment, my deployment is in progress. Once it is completed, I will go to my resources. Once I click on the resources for this DNS zone, under the overview, I'm going to see this is my SOF file, which comes by default. In parallel, I'm going to create my VNet, which is going to be VNet 30. So in the VNet 30, this is subnet I have chosen. 10.30.30.0/24. Since we already have the VNet 30 created and the DNS zone is also ready, this is a very important topic because until unless you do not link VNet to the DNS zone, nothing is going to work. So if you go to your zone, what we created, under the overview, you see this is the default fields all coming with no a record. And same time, you're also going to see there is an option virtual network links. This is a field where we need to work and associate all the VNets we want to participate in DNS. Now, when I click on the virtual network links, this is the view I get. You have an add button. We need to click on the add. Once you click on the add, this is the view you are going to get. You need to specify the link name. So in this case, I have chosen link VNet 30 since we are going to associate VNet 30 here. My subscription remains same, though I have only one, which is the default. And then I need to define what is a virtual network I want to associate. From the drop down, you might have multiple VNets, though I have multiple, I have just chosen the VNet 30. Now, this is very important thing, enable auto registration. This is what I was talking about, whether you want to go for the registration services or you want to go for the resolution services. If you want to go for the registration, you need to enable this. Since I want to go for a auto registration feature, I already enabled it. My registration is completed. Now, if I click on virtual network links, I see my link to VNet 30. That's a link name. Status is completed, and this is a virtual network which got associated with auto registration enabled. If you recall it, I had one more VNet, which is VNet 20, where I was running the bind and one Windows machine for testing purpose. I also associated that VNet 20 here with link VNet 20. Status is completed, virtual network 20, and auto registration is enabled. So now I have two VNets associated with the DNS services. Now, if we click on overview on the zone, I see there are two entries coming from VNet 20. So this bind VNet 20, this is a machine I was running Ubuntu with the bind, and this is DNS bind test. This is a Windows machine. So whatever the resources I had in VNet 20, those A records are automatically popping up here. Now let's try to create a new VM which is going to be the part of VNet 30. So you can see on my screen, I'm creating a virtual machine which is going to be the part of VNet 30. And the subnet it is going to use is 10.30.30.0/24. This machine is also going to have the new public IP address. Since this is a Unix machine, I have a default port which is 22, which is opened to do the SSH. Now hit the review and create button. The moment you hit the review and create button, it is going to create a VM. The moment your VM is up, you are going to see a new entry popped up. This new entry tells you there's a VM VNet 30. It's an A record and the TTL is 10. The IP address is 10.30.30.4 and it is coming from the auto registration. Now, if I go back my Windows machine, which is part of the VNet 20 and hit the NS lookup, I still see the old IPs reflecting since I have not changed the customized DNS IP address I provided earlier. So now I need to go back to the VNet 20 and go to the DNS servers and choose this as a default services. And ensure you're reloading that Windows machine to take new settings. Now let's do the final validation on the Windows machine, which is part of the VNet 20. I made those settings and redirected the DNS server to the default. Now after the reload, if I hit the NS lookup, we can see it is redirecting to the public virtual IP provided by Microsoft, which is 168.63.129.16, and that is something what is expected. Now do the lookup for the VM which we created, which is part of the VNet 30, which is going to be the VM VNet 30, and this is going to be the technet talk.in, which is going to be the FQDN. And now if I hit the enter and I see the IP is being returned, which is 10.30.30.4, and that is something what is expected out of our lab. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next video.